All right, guys, welcome to Greg and Andy Unleashed. It's just Andy here. I'm over in Adelaide, and we are here for NBF 2024. So it's National Baptist Fellowship meetings, and I'm able to catch up with a couple of people from Bundaberg. So we have Rachel and Hannah. How are we today, guys?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, thanks.
That's good. And how's the week been for you guys so far?
It's been really good. Busy with the kids in the mornings, which has been really good, as always, working with the gears and kids. And the evenings have been really encouraging. If you ever get a chance to go to an MBF, go to it, because it's just amazing to be able to catch up with people from all over Australia that you don't usually get to see, and just be encouraged.
No, it's been a really good week. We started off the week actually early here before MBF, catching up with a friend that we haven't seen in 10 years. And it was really, really good just to catch up with her. And then, MBF has been really good too. Been enjoying all the fellowship and people catching up with. So
Yeah, awesome. And it's been encouragement. Like, I've been helping alongside you guys with the gears, doing kids ministry. And it's been awesome just to see so many kids coming, and then people raising up their hand for salvation and assurance, etc. So it's been a really, really good time. So just wanting to bring it back right to the start. So you guys, obviously, these guys are from Bundy. So if you're watching from Brisbane, Bundy's like about 4 hours north of Brisbane, and it's pretty flat. They've got
Very
a couple
flat.
of attractions in. How many people? First of all, how many people live in Bundy now? About 100,000, is it? A bit
In
less?
the whole region.
Whole
so
region
in
is
Bundy
100.
itself, it's only 50,000, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's big city, and they've got a couple of attractions in Bundaberg.
Macadamias and Bundaberg ginger beer.
There we go.
and gelato.
And
And gelato.
wait, what?
It actually is a popular tourist destination coming to Nana's Pantry where I work.
Yeah.
Literally, we have so many backpackers and tourists that come in specifically for our gelato.
It is literally best gelato in town.
And this is not sponsored.
This is not sponsored. I'm not biased
But
at
we will
all.
take sponsorships. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so wow, I didn't actually realise. Okay, that's how good it is, apparently, guys. So if you're in Bundaberg, make sure you stop in and get some gelato.
And
Nana's Pantry.
macadamias, because the macadamias are really good. We're just in Coles. This is also not sponsored. It's just biased.
Love it. So these guys are from Bundaberg, 4 hours north of Brisbane. And how long have you guys been in Bundaberg for?
It'll be 15 years, 16 years in January.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, far out. And where did you come from before that?
Do you want to get this one?
Oh, okay. So originally we're from Toowoomba, actually. So that's where I was born. Rachel was born in the Philippines. And then my middle sister Beck and I, we were born in Toowoomba, and then Matthew was back in the Philippines. So we lived in Toowoomba for about 11 years, and then we were in the Philippines for a couple of years before, and then back to Bundaberg when we returned back. So we've been there for a long time. It's definitely home for us.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Been all
for
over the
sure.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so, as you guys were growing up, I've been to the church at Bundaberg. It's not a very big church. How was it like for you guys growing up, in a fairly small church?
I think even from a very young age in Toowoomba, that was a small church back then.
Yeah.
So when we were, I think I would have been about 6 or 7, there was no church in Toowoomba, rather. And the Lord brought our family and the Bunch family together. And I think there was a few other people, and we were praying for a pastor to come to Toowoomba and start a church there, and he did. So we've always sort of been in small churches and just very involved. I guess for me, I don't think I could imagine anything else, really. It's all I've known, really, growing up. Being in a small church and just being involved and helping out wherever there was a need. Our old pastor had a saying that a need seen is an assignment given. So if you saw a need, you just jumped in and helped. So small church has just been our life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And what do you do with that, small church? It can get quite, when you're the main person, it can get quite, I suppose, really discouraging when you haven't got, other people around you to kind of lift you up when you're, maybe you're serving in a ministry and you're not seeing a lot of fruit from it. And might be hard to stay encouraged. What's one thing that you do, or that just you're constantly reminded of, that encourages you guys?
It's God's work. It's not mine. It's not even Dad's work. It's God's work. So I run the ladies' ministry, and so every fortnight on the Tuesday morning we have a ladies' Bible study. And so sometimes there'll be 10 ladies and sometimes there'll
Yes.
be 2 ladies. But I don't know if this is weird to say, it doesn't discourage me when I only have 2 ladies, because then you get a better time with just those 2 ladies of getting to know them better and getting to spend fellowship with them and share the word with them. Because also the other thing is, I think, and Hannah says this a lot as well, it's relationship with the people, because they can't always just be there. So it's not about the numbers, it's God's work. And in terms of just encouraging yourself when you are in a small church, I think that's why things like NBF and TNS and Leadership Conference, all those different things, we can go and be reminded that you're not the only person in the world, that there are other Christians out there in similar situations that also love God, that maybe are doing it hard, and you can encourage each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if this quite falls under the category of the question, but something that I use to encourage myself when I'm in a smaller church, well, in our church, sorry, is you can never pour out more than what God can pour into you. So I'll be honest, when we went to TNS, I was really burnt out ministry wise. Like, we had started kids club because like I really wanted to, but at the same time, you know, when you're juggling work and you're juggling studying with Bible college and you're trying to pick up ministries in church and just stay involved in the relationships that you've already built and friendships that you've already built in your life, it's a lot. Like, you just get to a point where you're just so exhausted trying to keep up with it. So I went to TNS and Leadership Conference just really needing to be refreshed spiritually. And the Lord really just poured into me that week, those 2 weeks, and just gave me that encouragement. And I was just really reminded going, it really isn't you. And so you have to have a game plan when you are in a smaller church to make sure that you are getting poured into spiritually when you are serving as much as what I guess we are. Like, to me, I don't feel like I serve enough, if I'm being honest. To me, I'm just doing the bare minimum. But at the same time, I just would love to do more and more. But I also know I don't have the capacity at the moment with my job and my like stuff I already have on my plate. And so because of that, that's just something that I used to say encourages. You can never pour in, so you have to have a more than you can pour. Now I can't say it. You can never pour out more than God pours into you. So you have to have a game plan. Make sure you are intentional with your like daily devotions. Make sure you read really helpful like Christian biographies to keep you thinking about God. Listen to messages. Like, I've incorporated now, like, making sure I listen to one like preaching message just randomly on top of like the podcast I listen to. Like, I'll make sure I do one at least a week, and it just adds to your spiritual growth, because like when you are serving in church, you don't necessarily always take in what's being preached at you, is what I find. Even if you're sitting in a service, you might be thinking about different ministries that you've got going on in your life. And so that's just something that I do to stay encouraged in a small church.
Yeah, I love that. I know a lot of people that do watch or listen to this, they are from a small church, and that's such a vital point of making sure you're getting poured into as well as outpouring. Like, like a battery, you're giving out, you're giving out, you're giving out to so many people, and especially, in a small church, you're constantly serving. Like, you really are. You're constantly serving. And I've seen you guys, serving at your church. I've seen you, many different events and things, constantly serving. And just like you said, how to making sure you've got people pouring back into you. And I think that's, honestly, that is like a massive takeaway for anyone, regardless of whether they're, again, in a small church, especially needed, but also in a larger church, is just have people around you that are pouring into you. Older people, like people your age. And I mean, that's something that I always find Mr. Gear always talks about. He hasn't really touched on it too much this time, but oftentimes he's saying, hey, guys, you need to get guys around you that are all headed the same direction. Girls, you need to find some friends around you, all headed the same direction. So that's such a good point. I think that really, really does sum up a lot. And so how did you guys first hear about God? Obviously, your dad's a pastor. Let's say you grew up in a Christian home, but how did you first hear about God, and how did you come to salvation, Rach?
So I was actually just telling one of the girls this morning, one of the girls at NBF, that when I was 5, we were on holidays. So I remember everything about that particular day. We were on holidays. We were in Sunshine Coast. I found
Good place to be.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. I think Golden Beach maybe. and we were getting ready to go across to the beach to go for a little swim. And I think I was rummaging around in Dad or Mum's duffel bag for something, and I found a chick track, which was one way, I think, and it's a wordless chick track, I think designed for children, and it's just about the story of Adam and Eve and how they were, created and everything was perfect, and then sin came into the world. So it's a very simple tract, and I remember going to Dad and going, oh no, Dad came into the room, and he said, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And I went, "Not really," and so he explained it to me. But after that, I don't remember anything. If I got saved, Mum and Dad said I made a profession of faith, but I didn't remember that. So for the next 7 years, it was a constant, am I saved? Am I not saved? And I would pray all the time, but then I would also never remember, I just knew that I had prayed, but I didn't remember anything about what I'd said or anything. And when I was 12, we were actually in deputation to go to the Philippines, and we were in Melbourne. And as you do with your siblings, you're travelling around, you get into a little spat over something. I don't even remember what it was about, with our other sister, Beck. And she was in the right. I was definitely in the wrong. And Mum and Dad, we sat there and had a conversation. And I remember at the end of it, in this weird 3-story house that we were staying in for that period of time that we were in Melbourne, it was raining, it was cold, April 7, 2005. And I remember saying to Dad, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I need to ask the Lord to be my saviour and to forgive me. And I knelt down that day. And I mean, after that, there were some doubts here and there, like, did I really mean it? But I would go back to that night and go, no, I remember. And I remember a pastor about a year later, because people would say, I thought you got saved when you were 5. And I go, well, I don't remember. And there was a pastor at a youth conference in the Philippines who said that the Holy Spirit would bring all things back to remembrance. And so I went, well, I've asked the Lord to help me remember. He hasn't brought any of that back to remembrance. The one I can remember is when I was 12. And so that's when I got saved, when I was 12, I believe. And whenever the devil would just come and try to sow doubt in my mind, I would go back to that night and go, no, I got saved that night. I really, truly believed, and I knew I was a sinner. So that settled that for me when I was 12.
That's awesome.
Yeah, mine's sort of similar in the sense of I was saved at a young age. So I don't know if you've ever watched like those really old, they're not Left Behind.
Not with
movies.
the Cameron.
My goodness.
They're really,
like
really
those
old
like
ones.
really, really old movies
But
with
like
the
the Left
tribulation
Behind
ones.
Oh my god, they used to give me nightmares.
The Thief
as
in
a
the
kid.
Night.
Like Thief in the
and-
Night.
Yeah.
You watched it too.
Like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Those
was so
are scary.
scary.
Okay, so we actually had watched one of those movies.
still
as a
have
family.
them.
We
We
still
should have
have
a
them
movie night.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And we had watched them as a family in the Philippines. So I was probably about like 6 or 7. And we watched them, and it scared me so much. I was crying, and Rachel saw me, and she was like, what are you crying about? And I was like, oh, that movie. And so she took me to Dad, and Dad went through the gospel with me. And I do remember like the details really vividly. But from then on, so I got saved, I was baptized shortly after that. And I never really thought much about my salvation until I got into probably 12, 13, 14. I really struggled with assurance of salvation. And I was like, am I really a Christian? Am I not? Like, did I make that profession? Did I understand like what I was doing back then? And so, yeah, I really struggled with it. And then we had a series on Revelation at church. I was going home every Wednesday night crying because I was so scared of being like left behind. And so one night it's a pride thing, it really is, because I did not want to go to Dad and admit that I was struggling with assurance of salvation. And it's a fear that, they're going to be like, really? Like, of course you're saved. Like, I don't know why. I guess every kid struggles with that, but I definitely did. And so I went to Dad finally. I was just like, no, I can't stand this anymore. I went to Dad and I was like, I've just been really struggling. Like, and so he gave me verses of assurance, and he remembered that night like so well when I actually got saved. But he's like, I remember it, but he's like, you need to make sure for yourself. He's like, just because I remember it doesn't mean anything. And so I literally went and literally knelt down in our bathroom, and I prayed, and I was like, Lord, like, I don't know, like, for sure, but I'm going to make sure now. So I made sure of my salvation when I was like 14, I think it was. I actually don't have a date like Rachel. I just remember the moment. And every time doubt crept in, I would just think back to that going, no, I made sure. And the Lord knows the sincerity of my heart in that moment. Like, you don't have to doubt that. Yeah. So
I
that's my
love the
testimony.
verse. I was sharing it with those girls again the other day. in First John, where it says, "These things have I written unto you that you may know," and it's just such a comfort that God wants us to know. You don't have to have doubts. You don't have to go around going, "Am I a Christian? Am I not a Christian?" You can make sure, and you can have it. It's eternal, and you can know it for sure. And I think just being able to share the gospel with kids this week again has just been such a reminder of how much salvation really means. It's so simple, and yet it's so well. It's obviously priceless what God has done for us. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Have you noticed it's quite a common theme with people that grow up in Christian homes to get saved and then doubt their salvation?
Yes. Almost all, maybe not all, but I would say maybe a good 80% of my peers have struggled with doubts. I made a profession at a certain age, struggled with doubts
Yeah.
for years, and then they made sure of it later on in life.
What was, if you don't mind me asking, what were some of the main doubts that you guys had? Like, what was kind of the original? Was it doubting? Was it, oh, maybe I didn't believe enough, or was it, hey, maybe I didn't repent enough, or what was it?
For me, I think it was a lot of, what if I'm not good enough for God to love me?
Gotcha.
And in fact, that even after I got saved, that was something I struggled with. I have to follow everything that God says in the Bible. I have to do everything the right way because I need God to love me. And
Yeah.
I think it was something I maybe read where you can't do anything to make God love you anymore. You could never do anything to make God love you any less. And so that helped with any doubts that I had. But
Yeah.
definitely, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe God
Yep.
doesn't really love me. So that was part of my doubt.
That's definitely, that's not just you, that's relevant to, a lot of people.
Yeah.
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 How about you, Hannah?
I can't say I really had any struggles with that. It was just, what if I never actually believed? Like, what if I never was? What if I didn't actually know what I was doing in the moment? That was just my fear.
Yeah.
Like, did I actually just pray knowing what God was doing for me? So that was pretty much it. Like, I have other struggles that I went through years later with actually doubting God's existence.
Yeah.
So that was something that I went through when I was 18.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that kind of relates to your question, but yeah, pretty much I went through all of that, and I was enrolled to Bible college. God had already showed me specific verses. I was actually going into medical school when I was 18. That was
Yeah.
my plan. I was enrolled into uni. I was going to do a year of biomed science, and I was pretty much finished with my steps to do biomed science. And I went to leadership conference with quite a few doubts going, is this actually what the Lord wants me to do? And during leadership conference that year, he showed me, no, that's not what he wants me to do. So then I was kind of like praying about what the Lord wanted me to do, and I was actually really against Bible college
Yeah, okay.
to the point that it even shocked Dad that I went to Bible college. When I was like, the Lord's called me to Bible college. I didn't actually know until like maybe 8-9 months later that he was shocked.
I don't think even Dad told you. It was
Dad
Mum.
never told me.
I was like,
Mum.
oh, Dad was so shocked, and we were like, yes.
Because I was the one, I was like, no, I hate Bible college. I'm never going to do it. It's so typical of pastors' kids to go to Bible college.
Yeah.
And you get asked by pastors, oh, when are you going to go to Bible college? And I was like,
Yeah.
never doing it. And so then the Lord turns around and actually makes me, like, shows me that that's what he wants me to do. And so, so despite all of that, the Lord had been really real in my life, showing me verses, just really alive in his like communication towards me in reading the word and the different things that he showed me to go to Bible college. And even after that, I still doubted God's existence. Like, I literally started Bible college in like a week or two, and I was like crying over, do I actually believe in God?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that was a journey in itself, from just studying actually facts and science and how they all line up, which helped me get out of that mindset and realize how real God actually is.
Yeah.
So
What were some resources that you used to come to those conclusions?
my lecturer.
Your
My lecturer.
lecturer? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
no, he's like really, really good. He's like a walking science book. He was amazing.
smart.
He's got like 4 degrees.
Wow.
Actually, Malachi,
England.
Malachi, England.
who married Rachel
Rachel
Davies.
Oh, yes.
His older brother was my lecturer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so
Cool.
he's actually like was one of my favorite lecturers, hands down.
Yeah.
And he literally just like talked about how faith and science line up and how you can know God through science. You don't need the Bible to prove God's existence. And so
Yeah.
that was major for me, because I had never like understood, oh wow, like there's a lot of history and scientific proofs and discoveries that can prove God. Like that was all news to me. And I know that like it's something that gets taught, but I had never really understood it for myself. So yeah, definitely actually just studying it and having to do research from like my assignments in Bible college made me understand all the evidence that was out there for me. So yeah, I have to like be studying it and actually doing like assignment work for it to actually, I guess, sink in. And that was my study method to actually help me understand what I believe. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That was basically segued into the next question I was going to ask. Is
sorry.
no, that was perfect. Was there a time when you guys, as you went through life as a Christian, was there a time when you went, hey, what am I actually doing? Is this real? Went through some hard times, etc. And what were some lessons that you learnt from it? So, what were some lessons that you learnt from it, and then Rach, if you want to share, if you've got a time like that.
Yeah.
So lessons that I learned from doubting God.
Yeah, like looking back at it in hindsight, what were some lessons you learnt through it?
That there's no question that God can't answer.
Yeah.
Because, like, like those like stupid questions like, oh, can God create like a rock that's too heavy for him?
Wait, what? I have never thought of this question before.
Okay.
Can God create a rock that's too heavy for him?
Yeah, that's literally like a question that like people would try to throw out at Christians and try to debate that type of thing. And like I just find that those type of questions like really interesting to try to ponder on and figure out like how could I counteract with that question if I ever came across it. But anyway,
if we could create a rock that was so heavy that even he could not lift it, then he would be the only one that could lift it, because
Yes.
that's the amount of power that you would need.
Yeah.
It's a very circular argument.
Yeah.
It really is. But yeah, no, I think that was just the major thing that whenever people give me questions, like one of my coworkers that used to work with me, he was a militant atheist, is what he used to like to call himself. And he would throw out questions to me, and they never fazed me. And he would get so mad, but that's because I had gone through my doubting stage as a Christian. And so because of that, I would just like, even though I didn't always have the answer, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll do some research on that and I'll get back to you. I'd send him articles and stuff like that, which he would never read properly and just make fun of anyway. But yeah, that was just the one thing, like, you can never out-question God, I guess you could say. Like, there's always going to be an answer that God's already given if you research it, because he does not want anybody to doubt him. And there's always going to be something there to help prove God in that type of question. So I don't know if that really answers it, but yeah, that's something that really came out of that season of my life.
Yeah, it definitely does. How you can't out-question God, and then also second thing is that by you going through those things, by you taking that time to actually go, okay, this is what I believe, you're better able to let other people know, and not in a way of where you're like, oh no, this is the truth because I heard this from such and such, or I heard this online, or I heard this, but it's because, oh no, I can tell you the truth because this is what I've actually done the research on, and here's some info kind of thing.
Yeah. And sorry, one last thing about my coworker, actually, he's like, oh, you just believe it because you've grown up in it. And I was like, actually, no. And I told him my whole like story, and he was like, oh. Like, he realized that he couldn't use that argument. And so, yeah, it's true. Like, God allowed me, I guess you could say that God allowed that to happen. That way I could be calm but confident in my answers to his questions. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I think you have to have those times of doubt, because then that gives you that thought, hey, what do I actually believe? Because you can't just go through life, well, I believe this was what my parents taught me, or I heard it at church somewhere, or somebody said this. It has to be your own faith. And I think if there is a disadvantage to being a second or a third generation Christian, it's because you're so familiar with it. And you can get really lax. You can get, oh, well, that's not as important. Whereas I have a friend that's a first generation Christian. And she'll talk about different things that I've heard all my life growing up, and I don't believe in as well. But just hearing it from a first generation Christian, you go, for them it's so real because they've come out of it. They've come out of that sin. They've come out of that lifestyle, and they go, no, why are you even thinking about doing that? Because it's not right. And it's so worldly, or it has connections to the satanic world. So it's just very interesting, I think, when people go, oh, I've never had those periods of doubt. And I think it's just so important, because if they haven't, that's great, and you have solidified your belief for yourself. For me, that period of doubt when I was about 19,
Yep.
I'd been working for about a year at that point, and one of my co-workers came into the area where I was working. She was just chatting about her weekend, and we went out and partied, and we did this and we did that, and I went, oh yeah, that's cool. And as she walked away, the thought that popped into my mind was, that sounds like fun. And it didn't scare me because I guess at that point I'd started to be surrounded by all that sort of thinking, and it had just become normal to me. And the fact that thought of, that sounds fun, I wonder what it'd be like, maybe I should try it, that scared me. The fact that it didn't scare me. And I remember afterwards I finished my shift and I walked across the road to the IJ that was there, and I was buying something or waiting for mum or dad to pick me up. And I remember just going, am I going to walk away from God? Like, am I going to be another one of those people that they grew up, they got old enough to start thinking for themselves, and then they got all these doubts and they just walked away from God? Like, am I going to be another one of those people? And that terrified me. I'm like, no, I really need to know what I believe. And I guess without realizing it, I had started to question a lot of things based on what the people around me were talking about and questioning me over. And I think it broke down to I knew two things for sure. I knew God was real. I'd seen, like we were talking about with the kids today, you can't see God, you can't see air, but you can see the evidence of it. And if you ever get this chance to sit down with Dad one day, you have to ask him about his stories from the Philippines when he was an evangelist back before I was born and when I was a little baby, because they are like George Mueller's stories of how God just provided for him time and time again. And so based on that, and also just seeing in the lives of my parents, I knew God was real. And I knew the Bible was real because I had studied Bible and science in school, and there are so many scientific facts that just line up with the Bible, and history just speaks to the validity of the Bible. And so I knew those two things were true, and I just had to start at the bottom and go, Lord, I know the Bible's real, I know you're real, but I don't know if anything else I believe is true. Please help me. Please help me to find what I believe. Help me to stand on it, because people at work were starting to question, so what do you believe? Why do you go to church on Sundays? And all I could say was, that's just what I do. And I think doubts are, I think I'd heard a lot, like, doubts are scary, you shouldn't have doubts, especially when it comes to salvation, you shouldn't doubt your salvation. But I think doubts are important when it comes to your belief, because they force you to look at yourself. They force you to look at the Bible and go, what do I believe? Not what mum and dad believe, not what the church has taught me, not whatever, but what has God said in his word? What do I believe from his word? I need to believe it for myself. That was about 18 or 19. And I wouldn't say I was close to walking away at that point. That happened a few years later. We went through a really rough time at church, and very close to walking away from church and going, if these are Christians, I don't want to be one. So that was more so the Lord proving himself to me, and that he would never leave me. No matter what other people did to me, I could still trust him, and I could also still love people, because Jesus himself was so cruelly mistreated, and yet he still loved people. Those two times. There were times that, doubted, almost walked away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the lessons that you learnt through that time, looking back at it, in hindsight, is it, you kind of touched on one where just, going through those times is actually, as you said, hey, it actually strengthens up your faith, and you're looking back at it, and, you've grown from it. And as you said, it's really, I liked how you touched on one point. We make it, and I think we do this, a really terrible job of this, allowing people to actually question things.
Yes.
And I think, as bad as it is, I think the devil does a great job of actually doing that on his side. He goes, oh, hey, question this, figure out what you want for yourself, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yet, and God says, hey, come and let us reason together. There's one of my favourite verses is 1 Thessalonians 5:21, where it says, prove what is acceptable, hold fast that which is good.
Yeah.
So actually go ahead and actually prove something and find out what the truth is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I did like how you touched on that point because, yeah, I think it's just something so underrated, so left out, that we allow people to actually have a question and, hey, let's actually look in the Bible. Let's see what God says about it.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think a lot of my peers, if they had a question, what I would hear from them is that, oh, yeah, I just got shut down.
Yes.
No one wanted to talk to me about it. I'm like, wow, like if we had questions, obviously being, I think a little had a little advantage, had a little advantage in that Dad's a pastor and that we could take questions to him and say, Dad, what does this mean? You know, why do we believe this? So that was helpful. But yeah, definitely, I think people need to be allowed to just to chat and go, why do we believe this?
Yeah.
Why is it important? Because there's an importance to everything that God says in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's there for a reason. And like Hannah said, you can't out-question God. There's no question that's too hard for God, no emotion that's too hard for God. He can deal with it all. We just need to be willing to be able to reason, like you said.
Yeah, no, that is very true. And definitely, just, going on from that, it is easier when you've got, hey, a pastor that actually was a dad to maybe have a chat with, and they can actually kind of take a step back, or hopefully take a step back and be like, yeah, okay, here's what the facts are.
Yeah.
Without being, too focused on making you, convincing
Why are you
you to
questioning us?
believe,
Yeah.
And so, no, that's a really good thing. And then coming back to ministry, I know you guys both, massively ministry minded. You guys do a lot of ministries, despite whatever Hannah just said before. I don't do enough ministry, whatever. What is, and now I've forgotten what my question was. It was something along ministry. Oh, what's something that you could, piece of advice you could give to other people, younger people, maybe wanting to jump into ministry? And a lot of people won't do ministry because they're worried about making mistakes.
Yeah.
And trust me, at least we didn't have... so on Tuesday, I get up for an object lesson. All right, we're teaching faith. Trust me, everything's going to be okay, I say to the kid. All you got to do is sit down on a seat. I don't put the seat underneath them. Well,
She was very
I
trusting.
tried to, but hey,
Yeah.
they were trusting and they just sat down. I couldn't even get the seat in time. So yeah, don't trust me, but trust God.
Good
But yeah,
thinking.
so when you make mistakes, people are a bit scared. Hey, what if I'm not good enough at whatever type of area it is? A bit scared of people. What's some advice that you could give to people?
Well, if I'm being honest, of course we do serve in a lot of ministries. I still feel like I'm the most ill-qualified person to be in ministry. Like, I don't feel like I'm experienced. Like, literally, we just finished HBC last week, and we had to do this object lesson on... I had to do an object lesson, and I literally failed. I literally was like looking at Rachel. I was like, help! I just could not get the words out. I made so many mistakes. She ended up coming up because we were like teaching the verse after the object lesson, and she just added to it. That way, the kids actually understood what I was trying to get across. So
You did fine.
I don't know about that, but anyway, yeah. So I still make mistakes, and that's fine. Like, I don't think you should not have a go because you think you're going to make mistakes. Like, everybody makes mistakes, and even though we've been doing children's ministry for like, I don't know,
Yes.
5-6 years, well, at least me, you've been doing it longer. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make a mistake. And even like the different things that have happened this week at NVF, I said to Rachel, I was like, I feel so comforted that the years are still dealing with these problems, even though they're experienced, and just have a go. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Like, I'm probably pretty mediocre in my piano skills, even though I play for church, because I don't practice outside of church. So I could be better at it, but I don't have the time to practice. But again, like, if you love serving or you want to serve, just pick something and get involved, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my advice.
Mine's not as kind. Jump in and
Fantastic.
swim. In my case, I sort of got pushed in the deep end, so maybe that's why my advice is a little bit less, just pick something nice and serve. The lady that was taking care of Sunday school when we moved to Bundaberg, she was about to move away and there was nobody else. And I think I was 17. And she said, look, we're moving in, I think it was maybe a month or so. So she said, we don't have much time. She said, I want to give you some Sundays where I'm there and I can help you and back you up if you need it. And I definitely needed it. She said, but we've got to start now. And it was Anzac Day, whatever year that was. And I did a lesson on Jack Simpson and his donkey. I wrote every single word down that I was going to say. I picked up that piece of paper when it was time and I read every single word. I did not look at the children once. And I was so scared. It lasted 2 minutes. And I sat down and the lady looked at me and was like, okay, it's your turn now. And it makes me laugh every time I think of it. But even today, I did the object lesson and I said to Hannah, was that okay? Did it flow? Did it make sense? And that was after years of doing it. You know, you're still going to have those times where you go, wow, that did not work, or did I do okay? But just jump in and get involved, because that's the only way you're going to start. If you wait for the perfect moment, there's not a perfect moment.
Yeah.
Just get in and serve. And you're not going to know everything. I remember, I think shortly after I started doing Sunday school, there was an older boy there who was only a few years younger than me. And I did a story on Moses, lesson on Moses. And it was a Red Sea, and I knew as I was preparing the lesson, he was going to ask a question. I think he was like, oh, if God really loves people, why did he drown all the Egyptians? And I thought, I know he's going to ask that. I need to ask Dad how I'm going to answer this question. And I didn't. And he asked the question, and I was like, nah, I should have asked Dad. And the moment passed, and I don't think I ever got to answer his question. But you know what? That's okay. Things will happen. You'll make mistakes. But just get in and serve. God does not expect us to be perfect. He just wants us to have a willing heart, and he can do so much with that. So, yeah, don't be afraid to just jump in.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's definitely something we've been highlighting. Is just get in and have a go. And that's the whole point, really, of why we kind of started the podcast. And we just want to encourage people. Jump in and do something, live a full life. And someone said it earlier, to actually, you did, be the best that you can actually be. And I think that's actually is from the Bible, really. And be the best that we can be and serve God in the ways that we can.
Whatever thine hand findeth to do, do it with thy might.
Yeah,
don't just half-heart it. Go at it with all that you have.
Yeah.
And ask your pastor. I know for us, sometimes we go, I don't feel comfortable asking people, can you help in this ministry? Because we don't want to add to their plate if they don't have the capacity, and then we don't want them to feel bad if they can't do it and they have to say no. So obviously we need to do maybe a little bit more asking, but ask your pastor. There's always something to do. Even if you think, everything looks like it's been taken care of, ask him. He'll definitely be more than happy to tell you and to share with you things that you can do in your church.
All right, so here's a good question. What's a really important thing for girls and females to be working on as they're, hitting the end of school?
Being a Proverbs 31 woman. I'm kidding. I mean, that is important because it's just good Christian character.
Just a bunch just providing comedy. We're
not just laughing for no reason. We're not that crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe we are actually. Characteristics. Anyway, no, that's not relevant. Keep going.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh,
what you said earlier was really good.
what did I say earlier?
About uni and stuff. Is that?
Oh, okay. Well, we can go into that. Right, so something that they should be paying attention to as they get close to graduating. Is that
That's
what you said?
right. Yes, actually, yeah. And you were saying about that earlier, looking forward. You were talking about actually planning,
Prepare for the
and we were
future.
talking about financially. Let's say being a financial planner, not by vocation, but being a financial planner in your own life and thinking, hey, what are some things ahead that I need to be saving for or investing
Save for a house. Everything's expensive these days. Anyway.
Actually, guys, just come to Brisbane. Half the price of any other place in Australia, honestly. Or hey, go to Wait, how much is median house price in Bundaberg?
Oh,
It's like 500,000.
600,000.
Then might just go to Bundaberg.
Yeah. Why? How much is it in Brisbane?
I mean, it's obviously a little bit higher, but compared to Sydney, it's Sydney's half the price of Sydney.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
no,
Move to
it's
Queensland.
pretty good.
Bottom line is Queensland's the best state.
Yeah, except for a new bill that they've just passed in Queensland.
Oh, really?
About being able to talk about people in minority groups. So
Oh, have they actually have passed
it's
it already?
passed and it's going to start in 2025.
Oh.
So we're actually considering doing a little bit of an episode. It's probably the next one that you guys watch.
Okay.
Yeah, Greg and I are going to just find a bit more information about this
interesting.
because I think it's super important for people especially in Queensland,
Yeah.
to actually know what's going on at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us as Christians to be a bit more involved in our own politics and
Yeah.
how the government is running the land that we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I do feel like Christians don't give enough notice to politics. And as a lady, Robin, said last night, who got up on stage and was talking about the bill that's being, trying to be passed here in Adelaide about freedom of speech and equality. I can't remember exactly
And
what
Hiring
she
and
was talking
firing
about.
of people.
Yeah, hiring and
that's
firing.
fine.
Yes.
Yeah, and how she said that Christians are asleep when it comes to politics, and I wholeheartedly agree, because I did not actually realize how important politics was with the Christian faith until Martin Iles did The Truth of It live, like how many years ago? And he came through Bundaberg and we went to see it, and I was like, whoa. Like, Christians need to be vocal about politics. And, like, I know that it's a controversial topic, so, like, people don't like to talk about it, but actually, like, man, I want to go into politics now. Like, it's just so interesting.
Hannah Jackson for PM, guys.
Don't get me started.
You heard it here first.
I don't study it enough to actually be eloquent in it, but it definitely is an interesting topic that Christians should be learning about what is being passed and what bills are being introduced, and actually taking the time to sign the petitions. Like, it is important. They always need at least 10,000 signatures for it to be noticed. Otherwise, they won't even, like, take a second glance, which maybe everybody already knew about that, but I only found out about that recently.
I didn't know about it until right now. So, yeah.
So, yeah, 10,000 signatures. So if you're not actually doing your part and they can't get 10,000 signatures, the committees that obviously deal with, like, the bills, they won't even care if people try to oppose it. They're like, oh, don't have enough signatures, even though it's 5,000-6,000, they're still not going to care about it. You have to have at least 10,000.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's a vital piece of information right there.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been, like, I used to listen to quite a few, like, American-style political podcasts. Just, you know, there's always something interesting. Trump's just been, you know, an attempted assassination.
Yeah.
Kamala, you know, is
Harris.
having a yarn about some random something.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the border crisis and all of this other stuff. So there's a lot of, like, you know, in-your-face news.
Yes.
And just in the last, you know, half a year, I've just been starting to go, well, that's cool, but that's America. We actually live in Australia. So
Yeah.
what's really relevant to us right now? And someone actually jumped up on stage, was allowed to jump up on stage, obviously, and was telling us a bit about the politics, as Hannah mentioned last night, here in South Australia, and just becoming a bit more clued in to what's happening in our country, because that governs how we live our lives to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's important, guys, like, that are listening, watching, actually find out a little bit about, you know, your community, you know, who's on the council in your community, reaching out to them, you know, let's actually try and move some things forward for Christianity and not the alphabet community.
Yeah. And if you're actually in South Australia, this is something interesting that Hannah was talking to this lady about last night. Apparently in South Australia, they don't accept e-signatures. It has to be a hard copy of signatures. So I don't know how that works. I don't know who you see for that. But if you're in South Australia and you haven't signed the petition, like, you know, find out about it. I think they have a deadline of sometime next week. So there's not much time. So Robin was saying that they're not really sure how they're going to go. Because it's such a short notice. So if you're in South Australia, you know, get on it.
No, 100%. Yeah, no, there's a lot of wokeism, and we were talking with the Griffiths, Ron and Kerry, a couple episodes ago about this, and just what we were talking about then was how to raise daughters in, you know, this. There's a lot of wokeism coming into Australia and into a lot of schools.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely something that I think we need to, as Christians, just be standing up for the truth. And actually, I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are about this. I feel like, I think that there's oftentimes used to be the right and the left, right? Oh yeah, I'm on the right, like I'm more conservative. You got the left, more liberal kind of things. Although we are technically right, conservatives, liberal party, etc. But now it's just got, like, I've been hearing, even with this new bill for Queensland, I've got people that totally on the left are just like, what is going on right now? Like, this is a total loss of freedom.
Yeah.
And regardless if you're on the left or the right, this is just like crazy nut jobs that are saying, hey, let's just take people's freedom away to be able to speak and converse. And I'm not expecting everybody to love me as a Christian, and I'm expecting for people to say bad things about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, hey, that's just what comes with, this is what I believe. This clashes with someone else's belief system.
Yeah.
And so just having the freedom to be able to actually talk about it,
Yeah.
I think is absolutely crucial to any country and any place that actually wants to maintain freedom. And so just so important to actually kind of find out about this, get a little bit more involved into it. And that was pretty much
Yeah.
Politics
thinking.
can feel like a foreign language. I know that when I first started listening to political podcasts, I was like, I don't even understand what I'm hearing right now. But the more you listen to it, the more it actually starts to make sense. But that's what Robin said, because I said to her, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to learn more about politics? And she actually was like, we'll just pray about it. And she's like, and just listen to political podcasts, because she actually has had no training in politics. She'd never studied political science or anything like that. She was actually a midwife for like 15 years, and she was there to try to talk women out of abortion. It was actually part of her role. Where she used to work, and then a political party reached out to her and they're like, we want you on our party. And she's like, I don't know anything about politics. But because of that experience in midwifery and just talking to people about abortion, they liked that and they wanted her, and they kept pretty much pestering her until she was like, okay. So, but she had been praying about I think she said she had been praying about like the situation with abortion, and the Lord's just really opened up all these doors for her in politics to help out in those aspects. And so she says she's still really learning a lot about politics. But yeah, if you have never learned about politics like me, if you just start listening to it, you start to understand it more and more anyway.
Yeah.
So
Which goes back to what we were saying earlier about how do you get started in ministry. It's how do you get started in anything. You just have to have the willingness to know nothing and just have a go, I think. I think that's just the way to start in anything, really. Whether it's a new job, whether it's ministry, whether it's getting into politics, just go and have a go.
Yeah, 100%. And we oftentimes look at people that are really good in a certain area and we think, wow, like if I start, I would just be terrible.
Yeah.
And the truth is, yes, you would be terrible.
Yeah,
We would all be terrible starting something for the first time.
Yeah.
And they were terrible starting for the first couple of times.
100%.
But you do it for the first couple of times and you get better and you learn things and you get better and you get better.
Absolutely.
And it's just the same with everything. I think that we have a tendency to just get very comfortable with what we're doing and not try and step out and actually learn something new or learn a new skill or do something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's uncomfortable. No one likes to be uncomfortable. And I think that's a huge part in why all of this wokeness is coming in, because everyone wants to be comfortable and they don't like to hear opposing views. And so if they can shut it down, then they don't have to hear it and they're not uncomfortable. They're happy in their little bubble.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a very simplified answer. I'm not very politically savvy or all that sort of stuff. I'm not very eloquent and all of that, but in simple terms, that's my thoughts on it anyway.
Yeah, that's it. Seems like it's the heart of the issue, really. Yeah, not wanting to be able to converse and be, okay, we agree to disagree, just like feminism. Yeah. Excuse me, sorry, I just had something in my throat.
do you want to cover that topic?
I mean, yes, I'm just trying bouncing around. I'm trying to figure out how to get into the topic. Because it's easy to open up a can of worms, but it's hard to open up a can of worms on, when it's being videoed. So, no, I had something else that I was trying to, I was going to ask you guys thoughts about, but I totally forgot what it was, so I'm sure it'll come to me. It was about something to do with wokeness and it was politics or something, but now I've totally forgotten what it is.
I mean, I'm in a state of wokeness at the moment. I woke up this morning.
Yes, there you go.
Well,
Thanks for some more dead jokes.
You're welcome.
Haven't heard enough of those in the last couple of days.
It's green, and green.
A frog in a blender.
No, that's a frog rolling down a hill. It's
wait, sorry.
Red, green,
Sorry,
red,
green,
green,
sorry.
red.
What is green, red, and goes, let's say, 200 kilometers an hour? Frog in a blender.
Oh, yeah.
Going back to feminism, I don't agree with it, but I do think that it did play quite a vital role when women's rights were actually really bad in the 1970s? Don't fact check that for sure. That was pretty bad. Anyways, but I do think that it was important because obviously back then women's rights were bad, and not the greatest decisions
He's
being
bursting
made.
at the seams right there to say something.
Sorry, nothing.
However,
Continue.
I don't agree with it because I do think that women these days are like, oh, women's rights and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole lot of rot because we have so many rights. Women get paid equal amounts. There's literally nothing that women should be complaining about today. They have just as much opportunities as men do these days. And if anybody should have like any complaints, it's those women in in the Taliban back in Afghanistan, right? Where like they can't even like show anything of themselves like that. Where are the protests for that? That really annoys me. Like women are so quick like here in Australia to, or like in the first world countries, to get mad about what right they're not getting and like equal opportunities or being discriminated against by a man or something like that. Anyway, there's like so many things that happen in today's age that women like to classify as feminism and not being treated right. And I go, where are the protests for Afghanistan? Because that is right down a lack of women's rights right there. And honestly, like I wish there was something that we could do here in Australia to help them. But in reality, like at the moment, like I don't know, like maybe there are ways, but I can't think of any. Hopefully there are other people out there that can think of some ways that hopefully in the future could help them get out of that situation that they are now in.
So, what was a right or privilege that women didn't have
Oh,
but
here we go.
wanted in the 1960s or 70s?
The right to vote.
The right to vote, yeah, just the right to work. Yeah, from my research that I did, like, I don't know how long ago.
So, did they not have the right to work?
Back then, they actually, okay, I can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was like a thing of if you do your research, a lot of countries were like, no, like the woman's place was in the home. They weren't allowed to work. They weren't allowed to do that. Like they just had to be home. I'm not saying that's wrong. Like I think that's actually very admirable and respectful as women to be able to do that. That is a full-time job. But at the same time, like there are women out there that just wanted to be able to do something and work and could contribute to society. And it was frowned upon. And if you do research, you actually be able to see that in research.
Right.
So,
So, was it illegal or was it just frowned upon?
I don't know. You'll have to. I can't. I don't want to say for sure. This is being
Okay.
filmed. It's like, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't want
I
to
do
say
kind of forget
yes or
that.
no.
Yeah, I'm just like having a chat.
So I don't know. I can't remember. It's been a while, and unless like I continue to talk about these topics, it's not going to stick.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like I'm like brushed up on this topic. So
I think it's interesting going to the feminism movement back in those years. Germaine Greer, I believe, even now goes that she regrets pushing so hard. And she was one of the, I think, basic founders of feminism. And so, yeah, I think that's quite interesting how far feminism has come today and how she, who started it, now goes, I regret doing what I did.
oh, because it opened up such a can of worms.
Yeah.
Feminism. It really did. Even though I
When?
like-
Oh, when you were studying it, is that what you're saying?
no, as in like
Oh, the
of
movement.
feminism has opened up a whole world of issues.
Yes,
And
yes.
I actually can't remember what issues it did open up, but I do remember from my research that I did going, wow, like if feminism hadn't been started, our issues today would be very different.
Yep.
But I can't remember what those issues were. But like even like the LGBTQ community, like that actually was one of the issues I think from memory, like from studying, that actually came out of the feminism movement.
That's correct.
So-
Yeah. With that, with talking about feminism, what are some, obviously with working, and I suppose, you know, that idea of being a boss, being a, a hard worker.
Boss lady.
Yeah, well, being a boss lady, but at the same time being a hard worker.
Yeah.
And there can be a lot of stigmas around a lot of these terms. But what would you say is a good way to be a good example as a female in the workplace for people that are watching, in the workplace? What are some ways that you can be a good example?
I know one thing that I didn't realise I struggled with until the Lord really convicted me about was just your attitude. Obviously, the Bible tells us to be thankful and to give thanks and to have, to show honour to our bosses and stuff like that. Anyway, I think I maybe was working by this point for maybe 8 or 9 years. And I did not feel like I fit in unless I complained about different things. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even, those things didn't even bother me. Like, oh, you know, I hate that customer. They're so annoying. And they didn't bother me, but I'd be like, oh yeah, they were really annoying, and try to find something just to fit in. And it's very much part of the culture in workplaces just to have a complaint about something. And the Lord really convicted me. He's like, as a Christian, you are to be a thankful person. And yeah, sure, you might stand out like a sore thumb because you're literally going, oh, but you know, maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they were so grumpy because they had a headache. Maybe, and you never know what's going on in people's lives, right? So that's what they all say, be kind, because you never know what's going on in someone's life. But when it comes down to the actual practicality of that statement, no one really does that. They complain about people. So the Lord really convicted me about my attitude. And, you know, it's okay to stand out and be weird because you won't complain about things. Brother Young touched on it last night. Be a loyal person.
Yeah.
I was at one workplace for 12 and a half years. I think loyalty is so important. You're not ever going to agree with your leadership 100% of the time. In fact, there are going to be times you go, I really don't understand that. I don't think you're doing the right thing. Not morally. If they're actually doing the wrong thing morally, you should question that. But if they're just making a decision, you don't understand it, just still be loyal. There's probably a reason behind it. You might not understand it, but they have a reason behind it. And just be a person of good character. Doesn't matter who you are, really, female or male. God wants us to have a good testimony. And, you know, it's the old saying, you might be the only Bible someone reads. And if you have a bad attitude and you're not loyal and you're always complaining about this or that or talking about people behind their backs, then that's not a good testimony. So, yeah, just have good character. Easier said than done, but, yeah.
No, I don't have anything else to add to that. That's pretty much what I was going to say. Sorry. My voice is really cracky.
Talking about all those frogs this week.
Just don't get involved in the drama as well as a female, because I think females are so easy to get in on the gossip. Like,
Yeah.
oh, give me the tea. And when you work, I work in a very female predominant workplace. And so I really do hear a lot of the drama. And being third in the command chain, I've just got to stay out of it. Like, because I've got a position that I need to be held accountable to, I guess you could say. I need to be showing leadership, like in my position. So first of all, just stay out of the drama. If there's actually like issues, then sure, like you got to do something about it. But most of the time, like they just want to gossip. So stay out of it. That's probably the one thing being a female.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not wise.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And that's something I loved what you touched on as well, Rach. People actually bond the best
Yes.
over problems.
Yes.
And so, like, if you took everybody talking about problems away, a lot of people would not bond very well with each other.
And that's what I found. It was so awkward because people were like, oh, and start whinging, and I'd be like, nice weather today.
Exactly.
And you don't have anything. So that's why, like, oh, the Lord is like, you are literally bonding with them over complaints. It's not the right thing. And I'm like, okay, this is now awkward because I don't know what to say now. But yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I love that. And the attitude of thankfulness and not stepping into, like you said, Hannah, not stepping into the gossip and just rolling with it. And that's it's funny how a lot of the stuff that we see in life is so relevant in the Bible. God always is talking about, hey, don't sow discord, don't be a gossip. Like, there's so many verses in it, and then like I'm guilty of it as well.
Yeah.
Like, when we actually stop and we just think about conversations we have or being in the moment, we oftentimes do the exact same thing that God says, hey, don't do, or there's so many consequences for doing this in Proverbs or in the Bible.
Yeah.
And it's so relevant, I think, in life. So, yeah, no, I appreciate you guys sharing those things. I think they're relevant for myself. And, except I'm not a female in the workplace, but I think they're
that's what I
relevant
said.
for
It's anybody.
so many females in the workplace. And, quick question. Who would you rather have as a boss, a female or a male?
A male.
Definitely male.
I've
Interesting.
had two male bosses. One of them he was not manager material, but the other one, he was a great manager. And I think there's just something about, I've noticed it even at church, with soul winning. Like, we go out and I can read maps. I'm not terrible at it, but I'd rather not. And it's nice just to have someone take over and just do that. But yeah, no, my boss, who was a guy, he gave me the confidence to have to make decisions, to do them well, and not to second guess things. yeah, I don't know. Guys don't seem to micromanage.
Oh, it depends on the person. My boss is a huge micromanager.
Okay.
But I was to prefer male in leadership because I think that's the way it should be. First of all, I think that companies do run better with a male because I think they are wired that way to make good decisions for like.
They're less
I don't know,
emotional.
They're less emotional. They're not gonna.
Well,
my
no,
boss can be
yeah.
quite emotional.
I'll take it back.
I don't know. Sorry, I hope you don't watch this video. But anyway, no. I just think that guys are actually wired that way. I think that's the way God designed them.
Yeah.
So they do make great leaders. Sorry, they make great leaders, but I do think that female-driven companies are very smart and innovative. I do think women can be so good at running a company, but I don't know. I definitely prefer being under leadership.
I actually heard a really interesting thing about that in female leadership in church, where a pastor said, I don't remember if it was a conference in Australia or if it was just something I listened to, but God made women really great at lots of different things. And if he did not put them in underneath men in terms of like chain of command, that women would just take over and do everything. Whereas, oh man, now I really want to remember how it went. But where God has to tell men, you got to go and step up and do this. Where and tell women, no, you've got to submit. Where he tells men step up and do it, because we're pretty good at leading, but men are supposed to lead. So yeah, that was probably not a complete thought, but now I've got to remember where I found that and try to talk about that better. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you do notice even in churches, 70% are female,
Females.
30% are men.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some validity to that.
Yeah.
Well, quick last question. What's Sorry, I'm just totally
Tripping.
lost the plot right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't make any more mistakes than I do on this podcast. So what's a key life takeaway that you've got from your life that you can share with myself and with people that are watching, listening, and Greg that's listening to this at home?
Hi, Greg. Contentment.
Contentment. Yep.
I think really quickly, if I at 18 knew that I'd be in this stage of my life still, as a single woman, just working, taking care of myself and, whatever, I would have freaked out. But I was telling somebody recently that I do not want to look back one day and regret not making the most of this season of my life. There's one day I won't be able to go to all the conferences and help out with different ministries the way I do now. And I just want to find contentment in every season of my life. And I think that's possible. God literally has it there in Philippians where I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me, and it's talking about contentment. It's not talking about necessarily your provision and stuff which it does cover that, but Paul was talking about his attitude, and I want to have the attitude of contentment no matter what I find myself in. And by God's grace, he's helping me to do that. That's one takeaway life lesson that I want to have forever.
Love it.
Mine would be learn what you believe. I think that's very vital and important. And second, whenever you're going through a hard time, get used to asking, what is God trying to show me through this? I think when you're going through something hard, it's easy just to get very inner focused and go, oh, why am I going through this? But actually, the Lord allows all of them for purposes and to learn something. So if you can get used to asking it, then, you're going to be more aware as to what God's doing in your life, and you're going to start noticing what he's doing to help you in that situation.
Yeah.
So
No, that's awesome. Contentment and just seeing what God's doing, through those hard times. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks very much, guys, for coming on. Guys, it's Greg and Andy Unleashed.